At 72, I believed I had earned the right to a quiet and dignified life. My home, a stately brownstone in the historic district of Boston, was more than just real estate. It was my sanctuary. It was filled with the scent of old leather-bound books and dried lavender memories of a career spent fighting for justice in the city's highest courts. But on that rainy Tuesday afternoon, the world I knew ceased to exist. The heavy brass key felt cold in my hand, and when I tried to slide it into the lock, it wouldn't budge. The cylinder had been replaced. My heart, already fragile according to the cardiologist I had just visited, gave a painful and frantic thud against my ribs. I didn't panic immediately. Decades as a litigator had taught me that panic is the luxury of the unprepared. I stepped back, looking up at the ivy-covered facade of my home. Through the large glass panels of the front door, I saw unfamiliar figures moving in my living room. My antique furniture pieces I had curated over 40 years was gone. In its place stood modern, soulless, gray velvet sofas that looked like they belonged in a hotel lobby. I knocked firmly, the sound echoing through the quiet street. The door was opened by Mark, my son-in-law. His smile always reminded me of a shark circling its prey. "Eleanor." "You're back early," Mark said, blocking the entrance with a casual, insulting ease. Behind him stood Regina, my only daughter. She wasn't looking at me. She was busy directing a pair of burly movers who were carrying my late husband's mahogany writing desk toward a waiting truck. That desk held every letter we had ever written to each other. "What is the meaning of this, Regina?" I asked, my voice holding a steady, cold edge. Regina finally turned, her face a mask of practiced, hollow pity. "Mom, we've talked about this. Your health is declining. The stairs are a death trap, and you're becoming forgetful. We've made the decision, the best decision for everyone. You're moving to Silver Oaks. It's a premier facility. Everything is already packed." She spoke to me as if I were a child who had misplaced a toy, rather than a woman who had spent 40 years interpreting the law. "I never agreed to any of this," I replied, forcing my way past Mark into the foyer. The house I loved was being stripped bare. My life was being reduced to cardboard boxes labeled trash. I saw my grandson, Matthew, looking down from the landing of the second floor. He looked pale, clutching his laptop to his chest like a shield. "Grandma, it's for your own safety," he whispered. It was clear he was reciting a script he had been forced to memorize. I stood in the center of the chaos, watching my history disappear. On the walls, there were only pale rectangles where paintings once hung. My books were piled in heaps like firewood. Regina and Mark weren't just moving me. They were erasing me from my own life. They stood in the center of my ruined world. Two predators celebrating a victory over a victim they thought was too weak to fight back. But they forgot one thing. I was the one who raised them. The rain outside intensified, blurring the streets of Boston into gray watercolor smears. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of cardboard and betrayal. Regina avoided my gaze, focusing instead on her expensive gold watch. "The car will be here in 10 minutes, Mom. Don't make a scene. It won't change anything. The papers are signed, the house is rented, and Silver Oaks is expecting you. Let's just do this with a little bit of dignity." Dignity, the word felt like an insult coming from her. I looked at the boxes around me, containing my medals, my husband's pipes, and my daughter's childhood photos. Everything was being discarded by the people I had spent my life protecting. I realized then that my love had been a blindfold. I hadn't seen the greed growing in the shadows of my own home. But as I stood there, a cold, familiar strength began to replace the initial shock. Mark stepped closer, his physical presence designed to intimidate. "Come on, Eleanor, move it. We don't have all day. We have a meeting with the new tenants at 5. He reached for my handbag, but I pulled it back with a sharp movement. "I can walk myself, Mark," I said, my voice low and dangerous. I took one last look at the foyer, at the empty space where my life used to be, and walked toward the door. The battle was far from over. Regina handed me a glossy brochure for Silver Oaks. We've already rented out the house to a lovely family from the tech sector. The lease starts tomorrow morning. Your things are being moved as we speak. I looked at the brochure. It was a glorified prison with manicured lawns. My daughter hadn't just stolen my home. She had effectively erased my existence to fund her and Mark's failing lifestyle. I knew their secret. Mark's gambling debts were reaching a breaking point. They needed the massive rental income from this historic property to keep their own house from being foreclosed. "And the deed, Regina?" I asked. "The house is in my name and it is paid in full. You cannot rent or sell what you do not own." Her smile turned icy, the mask of pity finally slipping to reveal the greed beneath. "Actually, Mom, remember those papers you signed last month? The ones you thought were for your medical power of attorney? You were so tired that day, remember? You granted me full, irrevocable control over your entire estate. It's legal, it's notarized, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it now. You're officially a ward of the state under my guardianship." I felt a cold chill settle into my marrow. She had used my love and my temporary exhaustion as a weapon. They didn't just want me out. They wanted me invisible so they could liquidate my assets without interference. Mark stepped forward, placing a heavy, patronizing hand on my shoulder. "Let's not make this difficult, Eleanor. We have neighbors watching. The car is waiting, and Matthew will drive you to the facility. It's a 3-hour drive, so you should get started." I looked at my grandson. He was the only one who wouldn't meet my eyes. He was the weak link. I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I picked up my handbag and walked to the car. I adjusted my coat and sat in the back of the car. The rain intensified, turning the Boston streets into gray watercolor smears. Looking in the rearview mirror, I saw Mark already taking a bottle of my vintage wine from the cellar to celebrate. They saw only a week-old woman whose brain had turned to mush. But they forgot that I had spent 40 years winning cases against people far smarter and more dangerous than them. The game was just beginning. Matthew started the engine and the car pulled away smoothly. In the mirror, I saw Regina waving at me, her face glowing with relief. She thought she had disposed of a problem. She didn't realize she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She left me alive, she left me my mind, and she underestimated the fury of a mother betrayed by her own child. The journey to Silver Oaks wasn't an exile. It was a path to retribution. Throughout the drive, Matthew remained silent, occasionally sniffing. I saw his hands trembling on the steering wheel. "Matthew," I said softly, "you know this is a crime, don't you?" He didn't answer, just turned up the radio. But I saw the beads of sweat on his temples. It was an accomplice, but he was a terrified one. This was my first advantage. I closed my eyes and began to mentally list the evidence I would need to dismantle Regina's legal trap. Every mile away from my house was a mile closer to my plan. I knew the law inside and out. A signature obtained through fraud is just ink on paper, and I was going to prove it. I watched the dark trees fly by on the highway, my mind working like a high-speed processor. Regina thought she was the architect of my downfall, but she was merely the builder of her own prison. By the time we reached the facility, I had the first 3 steps of my counterattack ready. Silver Oaks was exactly the gilded cage I expected. The walls were a sterile beige, and the air was thick with the scent of chemical floor wax and forced cheerfulness. Regina dropped me off with a quick kiss on the cheek and a promise to visit once you're settled. As soon as their car pulled away, I sat down at the small desk in my room. They had forgotten one vital detail. They hadn't searched my medical bag. They hadn't found my secondary laptop. They certainly didn't know I had been recording every conversation in my house for months using a discreet security system they were too arrogant to notice. I had installed the system a year ago because I had noticed small, precious things going missing: jewelry, silver spoons, cash from my drawer. I knew Regina was desperate, but I hadn't expected this level of depravity. I opened the laptop and accessed the encrypted cloud server. The footage was haunting. There was Regina and Mark in my kitchen, drinking my wine, laughing about how easy it was to trick the senile old lady. I watched Mark admit on camera to forging my signature on 3 additional bank documents to bypass security. It wasn't just elder abuse, it was multiple counts of felony fraud. I didn't call the police immediately. I needed to ensure every cent was tracked. I spent the next 4 days acting the part of a broken, confused grandmother. I attended the mind-numbing bingo games, I ate the bland food, and I smiled sweetly at the nurses. All the while, I was working remotely with an old colleague from my firm. We were tracing the money through a maze of offshore accounts Mark had set up. They were planning to sell the house to a shell company and vanish with the proceeds, leaving me to rot in Silver Oaks. But my colleague Sarah was already preparing the paperwork for a devastating countersuit. I felt the old steel returning to my spine. Regina thought she had locked me in a room with a garden view, but she had actually locked a lioness in a cage made of her own stupidity. At night, I analyzed legal loopholes. Matthew sent me a text. "I'm sorry, Grandma, I didn't reply. Regret without action is just self-indulgence." I needed him to make a choice. On Thursday, I sent him a code to a single video file where his parents discussed discarding him too. The bait was set. The night before, my liberation was the longest. I stared at the ceiling and remembered my husband's face. He always said a home is a fortress. Regina thought she was the master because she had my signatures, but I knew that truth is a fire that burns everything in its path. Tomorrow I would return to Boston, and it wouldn't be a social visit. It would be a siege. My mind was sharp, my evidence was clear, and my resolve was absolute. I watched the moonlight crawl across the floor of my small room. Every sound of the facility, the rattling of a cart, the soft footsteps of a nurse reminded me of why I was fighting. They wanted to make me a shadow, a ghost of the woman I used to be. But tomorrow, the shadow would strike back. I had the bank records, the video confessions, and the support of the best legal minds in the city. Regina and Mark were about to learn that you never mess with a litigator. I packed my small bag, placing the laptop at the very bottom. I dressed in my best suit, the one I wore when I won my last case. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who was 72 years old, but whose eyes were as sharp as a hawk's. The world sees age as a decline, but I saw it as a collection of weapons. I was ready to go home. I was ready to take back what was mine. I was ready for justice. Friday arrived with a cold Boston fog rolling over the Charles River. Regina and Mark were already acting like masters of the house. At 10 a.m., they stood in my foyer, showing the property to new tenants. They didn't know these people were undercover agents and actors I had hired to record the transaction. Mark was counting his future profits, unaware that every greedy gesture was being captured by hidden cameras he never bothered to find. At that moment, 3 black SUVs pulled into my driveway. I stepped out of the second car, dressed in my sharpest power suit and the pearl earrings my husband gave me for our 30th anniversary. My colleague, Sarah Jenkins, walked beside me, carrying a heavy leather folder. When I pushed open the door of my home, now opening with my new restored Kiraj, Gina and Mark's faces turned white with shock and disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Regina shrieked, her voice cracking with a high note of panic. "Security! Matthew, why is she here? She's supposed to be at the home." She rushed toward me, trying to physically block my path, but a detective firmly stepped in her way. "Quiet, Regina," I said, my voice as steady as it was during my best years in court. "You don't run things here anymore. In fact, you are nobody in this house." Sarah Jenkins opened the folder and began reading the court order. "Regina, Mark, we have a restraining order and a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, forgery, and elder abuse. Your rental agreement is nullified, and your accounts are frozen." Mark tried to bolt toward the back door, hoping to grab a bag of documents, but he was intercepted by a police officer who had been inside the house disguised as a repairman. Matthew stood by the window, pale and shaking. He looked at me, and I saw the realization of disaster in his eyes. He had made his choice the night before when he sent me copies of his father's computer files. the final nail in their legal coffin. He wasn't a hero. He just wanted to save himself, but his betrayal of his parents became my justice. Regina looked at her son, realizing her own flesh and blood had sold her out. "Mom, this is a mistake. Mark made me do it," Regina screamed, falling to her knees. Her expensive clothes and perfect hair now looked pathetic under the flickering police lights. "We'll fix everything. We'll bring back the furniture. Just don't do this." I looked at her and felt no triumph, only a deep, exhausting weariness. "You sold my memory, Regina. You thought I was just old furniture to be discarded. Now, the law will decide the price." Officers began leading them out. The neighbors, the very people Mark wanted to impress, stood on their porches watching the perfect couple being handcuffed. I walked into my living room and sat in the only remaining chair. The house was empty, but it belonged to me again. The sound of sirens faded into the distance, leaving me in a silence that no longer felt scary. The first battle was won, and it was won with a total victory. The trial was a sensation in Boston's legal circles. I stood behind the podium as the lead witness, looking at my daughter in a prison jumpsuit. I felt only a cold, profound sadness. The evidence, my recordings, and the digital footprints Mark left behind gave the defense no chance. The judge handed down a harsh sentence: 8 years in prison. As the doors closed behind them, I realized that justice is not just punishment, but a bitter liberation. The first few months back in the house were incredibly quiet. I walked through the empty rooms, restoring the interior from memory. I spent a fortune tracking down the antique furniture Regina had sold. When my mahogany desk finally returned to its place by the window, I sat down and cried for the first time. They weren't tears of weakness, but of relief. I had reclaimed my home, but I also realized my mind was the most powerful weapon I ever owned. I decided my story shouldn't end with just coming home. Using the funds recovered from Mark and the court settlements, I founded the Eleanor Shield. My home transformed from a house of betrayal into the headquarters of a foundation that helps seniors protect their legal rights. I hired top lawyers and social workers to be a voice for those whose children try to make them invisible. Now, my home is filled with the energy of hope and struggle. Matthew became my most loyal assistant. He left his marketing studies and enrolled in law school while volunteering at my foundation. He still struggles to look me in the eye for long, but I see him trying to make amends. He helps the elderly navigate their digital accounts, protecting them from predators like his father once was. Our reconciliation is slow, happening over long teas in the garden, but trust is slowly being rebuilt on a foundation of honesty. Regina writes to me from prison. Her letters are full of complaints and requests for money or early release. She still doesn't understand what she did wrong, seeing herself as a victim of circumstances. I read every letter, but I keep them in a locked drawer. My forgiveness will not be fast, and it will not be free. She must understand the value of human dignity before I call her my daughter again. Power now belongs to me by right of wisdom. Today, at 73, I feel stronger than I did at 50. I sit on my porch, watching the golden sunset paint Boston in colors of old copper. My home is not just a building. It is a symbol of my victory. I learned that aging is not a decline, but a new form of power. I am no longer afraid of the future because I know that as long as my mind is clear and my will is firm, no one can silence me. The invasion is over. As the sun disappears, I go inside and close the door firmly. Inside, it smells of lavender and old paper. I look at my husband's photo and smile. We won, Robert. Our legacy is safe and it serves a good cause. My life is my fortress, and I will defend it until my last breath. The story of the woman they tried to discard is over, but the story of Eleanor, the protector of the weak, is just beginning. And it will be legendary.